Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Monta Watches Atlas. So first off, I want to thank very much Monta for sending this little guy along. They loaned this guy to me as a review sample. I'll be sending it back to him afterwards here. But nevertheless, this was provided to me directly by Monta, so I want to let that know. Of course, we have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and also I'm doing my best not to let that affect the substance of my review, but there you go, full disclosure. Next thing, let's do a little bit of size measurement on this guy. This is a reasonably small watch here. We can see if we look at the overall bezel, we're looking here around 38.5, 39 millimeter. The lug-to-lug distance on it is coming in here around 45, 47, okay, closer to 47, 48 millimeters. That's not so bad after all. The overall thickness of the guy is coming in around 10 millimeters here. And just overall, it is not a very large watch. And I actually kind of appreciate that. As somebody with smaller wrists, that's definitely a nice thing. Next thing, this guy is this is the Atlas. This is actually, you can think about this in many ways as being a combination of some of their prior work. A combination of the Monta watch SkyQuest and the Triumph. This is a Triumph case, but the SkyQuest movement, and in some ways the dial. So, keep that in mind. Next thing, this is actually a pre-production watch. This guy has not been fully, produced yet. They're working on that still. So this is a sample from the production. I've been told that it's going to be very similar, if not identical, to the final version here, but that's something to keep in mind. There may be some tweaks. And then finally, one thing to note, a bunch of people are going to ask me, well, Nick, what's with the extra arrow here? So we got our hour hand, we got our minute hand, and then we got this red little, and our second hand, of course, rolling around. Then we've got this other little arrow over here. That is a GMT complication. This basically tells us, it allows us to keep track of the time in another time zone. At the moment, this is set to U.S. Eastern Time, whereas the hands themselves is set to Pacific Time. But you can change that around, and that makes this a very good watch if you are traveling. For instance, if you go someplace around the world and you are far from home, you can keep that hand set to home, and that way you know what time it is if you want to call your sweetie or whatever that, however you want to roll with. So, but anyways, that's a GMT hand. That's what's going on here. And let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little wristwatch right here. So on the good side, to start with, you actually have a nice variety of choices on this particular model. One thing I like is that they present their watches as sort of configurable on the website. So you can order a charcoal style dial, which is what you're seeing right here, which has a little bit of a sunburst to it actually. If you take a closer look here, I'll turn on the extra light so you get another light source for sunbursting. Oh yeah, that's kind of nice. But you also have the choice of a silver, or they call it opaline dial, which looks quite handsome, as well as a more tealish, sort of bluish Monta blue. So you get three choices of that. You also get 4 colors of leather if you're interested, and the metal bracelet, like this is on right now, or a rubber bracelet, which is another option that they definitely offer. So that can be a nice little thing. Next thing, this guy is a 150. Next thing, the bracelet on this guy is quite good. I jumped ahead a little. But the bracelet, as you can see here, is very, very flexible. What I mean by that, it's not like in this sense necessarily, but it's a very flexible watch. So it sets down very cleanly, flatly on tables. It's not a big deal, but it's occasionally nice. But moreover, it wears very flexibly. This guy conforms to your wrist in a very nice way. The way it is constructed is just very nice in that particular domain. And so that actually can be very good. You also see little details here, and we'll touch on the finishing more later, but like all of the little bracelet edges here are chamfered. The links here are screwed down, so it's very, very, very easy to adjust this to fit your wrist. It's a nice little bracelet. I have to say I like the bracelet a lot, and it wears very, very nicely. So that's good. Next thing, this guy is 150 meter water resistant. Now, that probably isn't going to come up all that often as you are wearing your relatively dressy GMT watch, but at the same time, it's always nice. Basically, it's enough water resistance that it's not a concern, and that's a good thing. Next thing, this guy is a Sellita SW330 movement. I can see here, we can see the clear case back, and we can just gaze right in at that beautiful movement. So you have yourself a relatively serviceable. What I mean by that is that lots of people know what a Sellita movement is and can service it. So you're not like locked into a certain sort of center for repair like you might be for a Omega coaxial or something like that. So that can be nice. But you also have readily available parts for Sellita movements and frankly some good features. This is a solid movement in that you have, as you can see here, in addition to your hour hand, minute hand, second hand, GMT hand, you also have a date function. You have a date feature that is quick set. So if I pull this out to the second position here, if I go downwards, you'll see that it adjusts the date. And if I go upwards, you're going to see this GMT hand jump ahead by an hour. And so that's how you adjust the GMT hand, is by going to the second position and turning upwards. And then finally, if you pull the crown all the way out to the second position, it pauses the second hand. This is a hacking movement, as pretty much any movement should be in, well, pretty much any watch at this point. But anyways, it is also hand winding, etc. And it has the GMT. And you know what? Look, it's a solid movement. If you regulate it well, it's absolutely solid. And the thing is, it's regulated well. Monta is one of relatively few companies in this sort of a price bracket that is willing to offer an accuracy guarantee. They guarantee on their website plus or minus 5 seconds per day is their deviation for running. This is in line with what I experienced actually wearing and using this guy, and in fact, putting it on the time grapher, I saw on average about plus 1 seconds per day across positions, with the highest deviation of plus 5, lowest deviation of dead on freaking 0. So the accuracy on this guy is absolutely good to go, and I love that they're willing to offer that as a guarantee. Not just, it's probably going to be accurate-ish, right? And that's great. Next thing, the GMT function can be very nice, especially if you like traveling a fair amount. Having this GMT hand can actually be very nice. You know, for U.S. Eastern time, it's like, okay, add 3 hours, I can do that. But the moment that you're looking at like 8 hours or the 11 hours, something like that, it can actually be handy, not just to have AM, PM be differentiated, but to have a 24-hour time bezel. There were definitely some traveling over the overseas definitely has made me realize that I really have trouble with time. And doing those kinds of conversions in my head. So the GMT thing, if you travel a lot, is very nice. It's also worth noting that you have all of these 24-hour time markers on the outside, the chapter ring there, and that can be a very nice thing. So that's good. Next thing, this guy has solid lume. I'll go ahead and charge it up off camera with a Sirius flashlight, and what you'll see here is this is Sirius lume. Oh yeah. So you see you have lume on the hour hand, the minute hand, the second hand. This is just the shadow of the second hand right down there as I charged it, but still. And you have a differentiable 12 o'clock hand. You see all of the indices there. It's good lume, and it's brilliant. I have no problem with the lume on this guy. Good to freaking go, and that's great. Next thing, this is a very legible watch. You can see here that the dial, although it is not actually a flat black, because again, we have a little bit, I'll see if I can use this flashlight here to show it off. Yeah, you've got a little bit of sunburstitude, so the dial has some interest to it. It's not just black. But you also have these nice reflective hands, which will make it very easy to read, even if the lume isn't fully charged, because all you have to do is catch a little bit of light with them, like so. But you also have the white lume, and that against the black background is this is just a super legible watch. This is a watch you can read with your glasses off if you if you need glasses. If you don't need glasses, you can also read it with your glasses off, but that's kind of beside the point, right? But anyways, it is a very legible watch. Next thing, the size on this guy is very good. I'm just a big fan of smaller watches generally because I am a person with relatively small wrists. We put this guy on my wrists, which are running around 6.75 inches or so. We can see here that, you know what? Hey, it looks pretty reasonable, right? It doesn't look completely out of line. Having a relatively low lug-to-lug distance, as well as having it's just good. It's good to go. I like this size a lot. I like the thinness of it. It's actually not so heavy either. I mean, we can compare this guy. We'll put this guy down on the scale here, and we will come in at about... hold on, the freaking, that's the nice part about the links being so flexible. We're coming in here at 4.47 ounces here, configured to my wrist. We can compare that to a much beefier watch over here. This is the Omega Seamaster Professional, coming in at 6.04 ounces for the exact same wrist. So, yeah, this is definitely nice and light. I appreciate that very, very much. And so I like that too. And then finally, it is a solid value. Now, look, this is a $1,600 watch. It's $1,615. That's oddly specific, but have fun, Monta. The thing is, that's a lot of money, but they're giving you a bunch of money for it. They're not giving you a bunch of money, they're giving you a bunch of watch for it. I should clarify that. They are actually delivering a fair amount in terms of finishing, in terms of accuracy, in terms of overall. I feel like this isn't a bad value. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's a pretty good value, even though the price is definitely up there. Certainly, that's going to be out of range for a lot of people. A $1,600 watch is kind of, well, it's a luxury thing by a good margin, but at the same time, it's a well-done luxury thing. So, and it goes a lot further here than usual. So, to me, at least, that's what's good. It is a solid value, 100%. It has a great size. It's very legible with solid lume, a nice GMT function, guaranteed accuracy, good features, good movement, 150-meter water resistance, a good bracelet, and a bunch of different choices of, bezel and, of dial, etc. On the great side, the finishing here, it's good. Look, it's beautifully finished for a $1,600 watch. Certainly, you can get watches that have a more figured movement, etc. You can get watches that have a slightly more interesting and finished face. But the thing is, you generally paid a lot more money for them. I mean, to start with, there were some improvements from the Triumph. The Triumph, unfortunately, although I like the watch a lot, had most of the indices here, everything but the four main ones, were not applied. They were just painted on, and that always is something that feels a little bit like, okay, it's a little cheapy. It's a fine watch, but that bugged me a little bit. So going to the full applied indices all around, that's nice. You can see here that the hands on this guy are actually bent. That's a little detail, but actually that faceting makes them a little bit more legible in low light conditions, because even if one half of the hand isn't reflecting light, another half might be. So that's actually a beautiful thing. It's not just a luxury feature. Well, it is, but it's a good one, at the very least. The bracelet on this guy is absolutely good to go. The clasp on it, although we'll talk about the clasp a little bit later on, is nicely done. It's not a stamped metal sort of affair, or at least if it is, it's beautifully chamfered stamped metal. It's a nice little clasp. No, that looks pretty milled to me. But anyways, it is just a very nice clasp with some nice polishing on the Monta logo area here. Again, this is a review watch, so it's been around the block a few times, but still, overall, it's very nicely finished in that domain. You have a nice sapphire case back with a movement that is certainly not, oh my god, crazy finished, but certainly not bad. It is an attractive enough movement in there, 100%. You have the nice polished corners of the watch here. You can see this edge of the edge of the bezel there, absolutely beautifully polished. The sunburst, dude, the finishing is just good. This is a watch that, in terms of finishing, will run with the big boys, so to speak. This is a watch that feels like it is finished at a level that's a little bit higher than its price point. This feels like something you would get from, Longines, even maybe a step above Oris in a lot of ways. And so I think in terms of value, you getting a lot of finishing for your buck here. And so, considering that that's a big part of what makes a luxury watch, although it's not, a crazy freaking high-end Omega or anything like that, for what it is, it's absolutely a very nice value and finish. So, to me, that's what's great, is the finishing is very good. On the bad side, there are some areas for improvement here. For instance, the logo on this guy, I'd like to see that be applied. It's a little detail, but it's something that adds a little bit to it. And right now, it just feels a little bit on the flat side. It is also not an anti-magnetic movement. So, if you work with a lot of magnets or something like that, you could have trouble with that. Not a huge deal, but it's a thing. Next thing, the clasp on this guy. I'll zoom back out a little bit. The clasp on this guy is actually quite wide. What I mean by that is that this little folding part here, actually, this whole thing together, the part of the clasp that has to stay flat-ish is about 48 millimeters. And so that actually has consequences as you're wearing this guy on the wrist. And you can see here that adjusted for my wrist, actually, this link doesn't really work that well. This link is kind of digging up and then poking out, and so this caught on things on a regular basis. Having this clasp be this wide and then having the underlying part be even wider is not super ideal. If we compare this, for instance, to the Omega Seamaster over here, we can see that the internal part is about the same. The main bulk of the clasp is about the same, but so is this underlying part here. And so as a result, you have this area up here, which just feels a little bit awkward. This doesn't wear as well on my wrist as some other bracelets do as a result. And so that's not great. Another thing that's not great is there's a lack of a half link here. They don't provide, or at least they didn't provide in this review sample, a half link that I noticed. And so that's not great. They have these adjustment holes, but I firmly believe that adjustment holes like this are for fine tuning. They are for making it, if your wrist swells up a little bit, you can use that to adjust for that. It's not for making the watch fit in the first place. So long links mean you have a relatively coarse adjustment on this guy. And so, although I was able to get it fitting okay on my wrist, it wasn't ever great, and if my wrist swelled a little bit, we had a problem. We'll get back to that a little bit later. But this would fit me a little bit better with that half link in there. Next thing, and maybe one of the bigger issues that's functional, so to speak, and that's less me specific, is the GMT functionality. This is the same thing I said about the SkyQuest, but it remains relevant here. The GMT functionality here is a little bit backwards in this kind of a movement. In fact, it's the case in almost every mechanical GMT watch out there, so I'm not beating up on Monta specifically. This isn't a you guys suck. This is a Salida. Guys, come on. The only exceptions being things like Grand Seiko, a Tudor, etc. Those can do a little bit better, but basically, Rolex does it as well. What you kind of would want in a perfect world is you want the minutes and second hand to stick with the GMT, and the hour hand, local hour, this guy to be independent. But the case, that's not the case. In fact, when I pull the crown all the way out, what you can see here is second hand stops, and this then allows me to adjust the hour and minute and the GMT comes with it. So basically, if I wanted to change time zones, like I just changed time zones there, what I would have to do is first make that time zone adjustment, then I would need to come back here, and then in the second position, change the GMT hand to where I want. So I have lost the accuracy of the minutes and seconds hand on this guy in adjusting the local hour, and then I need to go on and in a second step, change the GMT hand. As opposed to if it were working more like the Rolex or Grand Seiko model for it, where instead, if you change time zones, you can have the GMT hand stay where it is, and then just pop the local hour around. This makes it real easy if you cross, and it makes it very easy to keep GMT on home. So this is just sort of more fiddly. It makes for a watch reset process that is algorithmic rather than just like pull, yank, pull, and you're good. Pull, yank, pull and yank are the same thing. Oh, guys, it's been a day. Anyways, pull, twist, push, and then you're done. So I'm not a big fan of this particular approach to GMTs. Like I said, everybody's doing it this way, and so, but it's still not great. So to me, at least, that's what's bad here, is the GMT functionality is backwards in this Salida movement, with the GMT hand independent rather than the hour hand. There's no half link. There's a very wide clasp on this guy, and there are some definite areas for improvement that aren't generally a big deal. On the ugly front, they've done one thing here that frustrates me endlessly, and that is that they have taken a step back in the clasp relative to the Ocean King. As some of you may know, I actually owned for a good while the Monta Ocean King. In fact, the only thing that kicked that out of my collection was buying this even more expensive watch, which, for maybe sentimental reasons, I ended up liking a little bit more. But nevertheless, I really like that watch a lot. One of the things I liked most is that it had a toolless quick adjust. I'll show you on the Omega here, but the Monta system wasn't all that different, where basically if I want to change the length of the bracelet due to, for instance, swelling in my wrist, all I need to do is this. I need to pop this up a little bit or push it in. Pop out, in, and then when I close the clasp up, I have a longer bracelet or a shorter one. This means that if you have some wrist swelling, if you have some kind of problem, it's not a problem. All you do is you pop the watch off and you're good to freaking go. On this guy, unfortunately, you need to have a tool. You need to have a spring bar tool. You need to take it off, set it down on something, pop this side out, try and keep that in position. It's just not great. You can do a little bit better if you close the clasp, etc., but still, who's carrying a spring bar tool? Really, guys? Really? So the fact that they had this beautiful tool, this quick adjust on the Ocean King, and then they don't have it in this newer model feels like a major step back. And in fact, it's not even an option here. For me at least, that's a big problem, because once you have a quick adjust on a watch, you realize how much more comfortable it makes the watch feel. If you generally wear your watch flopping around on your wrist like a dead freaking salmon, then sure, okay, it may not bother you. But I know that they can do better than this. And that's really frustrating to me. The only explanation I've gotten out of them is that they were trying to keep the cost down on this guy. But you know what you call a watch with a so-so clasp that's $100 cheaper? A watch with a so-so clasp. I mean, seriously, guys, give me the option to pay you $100 more for a good clasp. I mean, that to me feels like a real pain point. I wish I could at the very least choose, like, they have bracelet, they have good bracelet as an option, and then rubber. That would be a better approach. And honestly, I feel like it just needs to be a part of the watch, because Monta, you are young, you're scrappy as a brand. You're out there trying to make your name. And you know I love your work. This is coming from respect, but you need to be delivering better than the old Swiss guard to get noticed. The fact that your competitors aren't doing this is not an excuse for you guys to cut corners and ship a clasp that's, a little bit 1990s. Instead, it's an opportunity for you to be better. A clasp like on the Ocean King helps make your product better than Aura's, better than Zin, better than Longines, better than a lot of the competitors. It is a big deal. It's a huge advantage, and it feels a little weird to me that they're sacrificing this advantage to cut a small corner on cost. I really wish that at the very least this were offered as an upgrade, as an optional sort of thing that you can get, this being the quick adjust clasp. That would just make this a better watch, generally speaking. So, at least to me, that is the ugly, is that even though they have the availability of an excellent quick adjust clasp, they didn't freaking include it, and they don't even offer it as an option, and that's just a huge step back for the brand. On the final conclusion front, this is a very nice little watch. I mean, as you can probably hear, I like this thing a lot. I mean, it's got a very nice case, it's a solid movement with a good guarantee of accuracy. It's nicely finished, it's got a nice bracelet, and even though it's $1,600 compared to the rest of the Swiss crew, Just saying, you're definitely coming off. You're getting some decent value here. It's not perfect. It's got the wide clasp. There's no half link. There's the lack of toolless quick adjust. Guys, come on. And the GMT movement is fine, but it's not quite the way that I think most people would want a GMT to work. But the thing is, it remains a very nice piece. It's also a very predictable piece at some level. Combining the Triumph case and the SkyQuest movement was sort of an easy grab. I'm not diminishing the technical accomplishment here, but at the same time, yeah, that's a good idea. That's an easy plan for them to go. And it gives them a fourth option for their lineup that I think will be compellingly good for a lot of folks. And in fact, I think this actually gives them a really good option in their lineup because this is, in my estimation, strictly better than the Triumph. I mean, it's $100 more, that's sure. But then the movement might be a little more complex to service. Might cost you a bit more when that time comes. But the thing is, in finishing, in features, this is way more than $100 better. If you are thinking of buying a Monta Triumph, I highly encourage you to think about doing this instead because it's just a nicer watch overall. Even lacking the clasp, it is still a big improvement in terms of finishing, in terms of dial cleanness. Frankly, in terms of the dial general, I just like this a whole lot better. So there you go. The SkyQuest is their other GMT option, and it is a very different watch, but it does something very different. It is a bigger watch with a much, well, it's a different style. It's more diver style, more like the Rolex GMT Master or something along those lines. The rotating bezel offers you a third time zone, so here you only really have the time zone for the local hand and the one that this is pointing to. If you have a rotating 24-hour bezel, you can actually set that bezel to a different offset, and then you get a third time zone, which actually can be helpful to some people. You also get a loomed pip here and a rotating bezel that can be useful for timing events, like, oh, I need to go pick up my pizza when this hand reaches the bezel. A little detail, but it's there. And you get a substantial, although probably not super important, bump in water resistance. I mean, 150 to 300 is definitely a step up, but now you're diving. Really. But this also does cost substantially less, and it presents itself a little bit more subtly. I mean, the big divery sorts of watches are definitely in. They're definitely cool, and I freaking love them. Let's be real here. But I think for a lot of people, this will feel like a slightly better approach. Ultimately, for me at least, the lack of adjustable bracelet and my preference for a bigger, badder bezel sort of watch means this one isn't for me. I'm not really of any risk of picking one of these guys up. I like this case, but I also don't necessarily super love it. By the way, the radial finishing around the dial there. But the thing is, it is a great watch. And if you're liking the style, if you're liking the GMT, and you don't mind the price, then, well, at last, your love has come along. No? Okay. That's the end of the karaoke session at today's review. So anyways, the Atlas, very nice watch. Hope this has been interesting to you. And have yourself an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now. Yes, I'm aware I can't sing. Bye now.